order. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I would entertain a motion to approve the order of agenda. John?
Second?
Motion and second to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. No one has signed up from the audience to speak. We got notice earlier today that Dave Marquardt will not be able to attend tonight to give an FEA report. So seeing as there's no sub for Dave, that's fine. We'll move on to the items on the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Dinah, second by Christie to approve the items on the consent agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion approved. Our lone business item tonight, Anne Marie will be throwing them our way. In order to start the process of negotiations every 2 years, we formally recognize the body who will be representing the teachers at that process. So the memo before you is that formal notification from the Fargo Education Association. So all we need to do is make that recommended motion to start the process rolling.
Okay.
David?
You're
good. She's fine.
I like blue better.
Hear you. People.
My recommendation is that the board hereby acknowledges the petition of the Fargo Education Association and directs that a notice of consideration be posted in each school building in the district and that a determination be made at the December 13th board meeting.
I second.
Motion and a second to acknowledge the petition. Anne Marie, if you could call the roll, please.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker, Boyd.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. So tonight's meeting will be primarily discussion. Zip through. Must be holidays coming up. So I want to thank everyone who took the time to go visit their schools and then reflect their thoughts. So we'll do the school liaison visit discussion first. And just to give folks a little background, over the years we have done many different formats of school visitation. As you know, we all have our liaison schools, 2 or 3 of them. And what this has really evolved into, and thanks to the communication committee for the work on this and putting it into our governance policies, is that the visits to the schools really now are not necessarily primarily for student input, which was kind of the focus years ago, but rather our own continued professional development, so that we are familiarized with different aspects of how the schools go. And so as the years go by and you visit different schools, you can choose an area of focus if you like, or just try to get a broad view or a specific thing. And then those liaison visits are then written up here so that it's also posted so folks can see what your thoughts were. So thank you. These were really fun to read, different areas of focus. And if anyone would like to just share something that they really want to emphasize or that really particularly struck them, we have the luxury of time, so feel free. Oh, John.
I really like this format, and I know that the board has gone through a lot of different things. And your point about professional development, one thing that really struck me was when I was visiting at McKinley, I got to visit the classroom that came up in our last board meeting that has 29 students in it. And we see our spreadsheets here, and we have 11,200 kids, and it's easy to think 29, 22, 14, 15. They're all individual kids. And it's amazing, too, what the difference is between 29 kids in a classroom and 22 and maybe 15. And I think it's so great of an opportunity for us to get away from our tables, away from our spreadsheets, away from our charts, and to get into those classrooms and not to judge or to be rating anybody, or just a chance to get in there and see what's actually happening on the ground. And so I like that. I like that I was able to go to the principals of my liaison schools, and I didn't really have any agendas. It was, what's going on at your school? Here's a block of time I can be there. Show me what you want to show me. Is there something good, something that's challenging you? Your opportunity to inform me about what's happening on the ground, and I really appreciate that. I think it's a great format for us to be doing this.
Cool, thank you. And just to give a little point of clarification, that classroom of 29 is an anomaly, and because of a particular situation, and I'd invite Dr. Augrey to give us a little context for that and how why something like that would happen, and then how it's managed.
Sure, thank you. You'll probably see if you look on our dashboard that there's also classrooms of 15, 16. And as our district is more mobile, when we make class size lists and hire teachers in the spring and into June, sometimes we have kids walk in first day of school or after the fact. And in that case, that did occur. And now every child that comes in is that same grade level, and we only have one section. However, we've worked really closely with the teacher, Mrs. Jansen, the school principal, is in contact with her. Every time I'm at McKinley, I am there. We've put para support in, not as a special education support, but as a instructional service to be able just to help all students in the classroom. And we did have one student that moved out, so we'll be down to 28. And I think there's another one talking about moving at 27. And by all means, we don't want students to be leaving, but they're not leaving Fargo schools. They're transferring within the district. But we do have those anomalies that happen, especially in our smaller neighborhoods.
Dr. Schatz?
And I went to Rachel and I asked her about that particular classroom, and we are going to hire a full-time sub in that classroom too, so that there's some additional supports, and that'll alleviate having other people with other jobs having to come in and do some of the supports. But they have a very good plan now, and I think moving forward, once we hire that other full-time para, that should be very well handled and staffed, and so we should be in good shape. But again, it's an anomaly overall, the numbers that we have.
Yeah, the smaller schools, you don't have as much flexibility to split up a class, so thank you. Thank you very much. Dinah?
Not to flog this topic, but I think that it just shows the quality and caring of our administration when there's an issue that's like that they can figure out, working with the teacher and the principal in the building, what the best way to handle it is with the kids' best interests, because that's really what we're all about. So that's an aside that has nothing to do with my report. But I wanted to say I also really enjoyed this, because I'm the one who sort of instigated and pushed for this sort of change in the way we use our liaison visits. And I think I've always said that it's important for us in the boardroom to understand what's going on in schools. Otherwise, you can't make good decisions for what's going on in the schools. And we initially not mandated, but suggested that everybody take the same focus when they visited their schools. But we've done this so many times, at least 3 of us have done this enough times, that it's at a point now where people can select what they want to do. So the 3 newbies have never been told, new members have never been told that they're, that you need to do a certain thing. So I think it's great that you guys can go and figure out what it is you don't know and find out and just be sponges. So, and every year, of course, we'll have different schools. And we do have I noticed also that most of you went to all of your schools, and I only went to one. But you'll see that I went I didn't have my official visit to my other 2, but in the spring, maybe I'll be the only one left with something to say. So there you go.
Thank you, Dinah. Anyone else?
Well, if you noticed by my visitation form, I am constantly amazed by my ineptness on a computer. People storing in the cloud, I think mine stores in the sewer. I have no idea. I have no idea where stuff goes when I type it up. But I did get the form sent from Eagles. Bennett and Davies are somewhere. So I just threw something together and Anne Marie was kind enough to put it in here. I just wanted to tell you a few things I missed that you missed in my original one that's out there. Bennett, elementary schools just absolutely blow me away. I've got 2 5-year-olds that I can't keep concentrated on anything for 4.5 seconds, and they've got 20 to 25 kids in there, and they're on task, and I mean, elementary teachers are absolutely amazing. I just cannot give enough credit and praise to the quality of education that goes on there. One of the things that Bennett is doing that I found really interesting was in one of their back hallways, they have posted each child and they're graphing them as they move toward, I know it's not called at grade level. What is it?
It's their data well where they're tracking each child's 1-year growth
Yeah.
in math and reading.
They've got 85% of their kids currently at where they're supposed to be. And Sarah turned out to be the daughter of a man that I've known forever and ever. We talked for a long time, and she said next year they intend to have that so the kids can see it. Right now it's in a back room. But it's really amazing to see that many kids from that diverse a background, and they're all doing so very, very well. Davies is an exceptional high school, just as North and South are. They have a cafe. It looks like an ordinary restaurant in any place that you stop in. Tables are set. They've got waiters. They've got bus people. They cook. They prepare the meals. They clean up and everything. Several teachers stopped in and got to-go boxes while I was there. It really gives the kids a different perspective of the work environment. They've also got a CNA program that turns out fully certified CNAs. And I think it cost my daughter-in-law over $2,000 to get her CNA certification. Now these kids have it for free. It just goes on and on. They've got a greenhouse, and Troy said, with the passage of certain legislation recently, there may be a profitable venture that we can get.
Thank you, David, for that report. Wow, you went there. Anyone want to follow that? Anyone have any thoughts to share on there? Rebecca, we're talking about the school visits. If you have anything you'd like to add or anything that stuck out with you? John, sure.
One thing that didn't make it into my report from my Longfellow visit that I forgot about was that they're planning in the first week in December here to do the hour of code for the whole school, K through 5. Principal Hendrickson is a very tech-savvy guy, very geeky like me, and I appreciate that. And he is so excited about this. He's personally taken the kindergarten classes as his charge, and it's really cool. I'm really excited about that. It's a personal passion of mine, and so I'm excited to see that. Hopefully, we get some lessons learned out of it. And it was cool because one of the kindergarten classrooms, when I stopped by there, the teacher was actually teaching the kids how to use their username and passwords to log into their own systems. So we're starting them at kindergarten here, getting them going.
Wow, the language of your people. Rebecca.
Thank you. Sorry I was late. There's also, if everyone does not know, there's a holiday lights parade downtown. So that explains why I saw a school bus all decorated in holiday lights. At any rate, but I did want to mention at my visit at North, I guess this is across the school district, but this became just as a reminder to me, our commitment through Fargo Public Schools to educate all children that we have in the district. From the child that I visited with, he's a senior, and I think he's taking 5 or 6 AP classes. He was going to be, I think maybe a physics class, he was going to be teaching himself. And he's applied to either Stanford or Harvard, and that's his first choice, to some that are severely challenged. And with the discussion that's going on in our community right now in regard to who we welcome, I just want to say again how proud I am to be a part of this board and the administration and the district that's, I mean, we have to educate all of the children that we receive, but I believe we also want to. And we spend a lot of time talking about how we offer our children a global education. And I think, I believe that. I believe my children receive a global education as a result of all of the citizens that we have in our community. So I just wanted to, I felt the need to say that again, and how proud I am to be a part of that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Christy and then David.
Just want to touch base. My report for Claire Barton Hawthorne didn't get in because I finally got in to see them yesterday. But one of the things, I was with their strategist, and I was with them with helping a little girl in math recovery. And it was really amazing. She moved here from Massachusetts, and she was in a school that was closed down because of their lack of meeting standards. And so it really hit home with us how we are a school of excellence and how we do so many things above and beyond that we kind of take for granted. And this little girl, just the simplest math techniques that she was just starting to learn as a first grader. And so I think it's wonderful to see she progressed through as we were, I was in with her about 20 minutes, and to see the excitement when she could understand the before and afters on numbers and those types of things. So I think that's really key.
Great, thank you. David.
This is for you. Davies is just starting to work on their production of, I think they're doing The Music Man this year, aren't they? Oliver. The auditorium, the back wall of the auditorium is the wall of the woodworking shop. And they've got 2 overhead garage doors, so they can simply raise the doors. They make all their own sets and everything, and it's true. I mean, it's a great, that architectural design of that school is wonderful. They've just really utilized their space well.
It was actually designed before I came, so I just made sure the garage door was hung. So.
Nice. Rebecca.
Has anyone mentioned attending the musical at North High, Sound of Music? That was fabulous, just blew me away. I was so, I always am impressed by the talent, that our kids showcase. But I was curious just how, because of the history of that musical, how it would, I think even how I felt sitting there. And it was interesting because we as an audience, we were really we were participants in that musical really at the end when the Von Trapp family, gave their performance as they did in the show. And so it was eerie feeling too. And I talked to other people that attended the production, and a couple of them also said they felt rather uncomfortable, but we're supposed to because of the what was going on at that time in history. So, but kudos to everyone that was involved in that production. It was excellent.
Great, thanks. China.
Well, and Legally Blonde at South was also outstanding. Very different genre, but a very interesting, timely message in that one too, believe it or not. So I think that all of the schools, I think we say this over and over again, and I think one of the things that we should be proud of is that we really do believe in STEAM, and that the arts, in all forms of the arts, whether it's performance art or visual art or whatever it is just as important in our school district, and kids thrive with those things. And so I think we should be very proud of that as well. So.
Absolutely. Brandy, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I also went to Sound of Music. It was amazing. Like those kids, I mean, you would have thought that they were in a Broadway musical. It was fantastic. I do have a few things about Lewis and Clark too. The thing that I found the most impressive, I was taken around to all the classrooms, is the different seating and the lighting that they've been doing in each class. There was one class that had totally different lighting, like just different lamps all the way around. and the seating, they were on, you know, some were on balls, on little exercise balls, and I just think that that was pretty neat, the way they just were concentrating on the teacher, and yeah, we do a fantastic job here. Very proud.
Thank you. Anyone else? Great. Well, again, as you saw in my report, I was focusing on school climate this time and just left some time to have some pretty in-depth conversations with the principals, and I'm real grateful that they took that time to spend with me. And yeah, it is, the depth of what we do is pretty amazing, and that each school has developed their own approach and focus on their school culture. It was pretty inspiring. Unless anyone else has any final thoughts, David?
One more thing regarding Davies, and I mentioned this to Dr. Schatz. Matt stops at 52nd Avenue, and the principal said that's a real problem for them because they have no public transit for those kids to get there. And they've done some really innovative things. They held parent-teacher conferences at Ed Clapp this year for some of the people who had no transportation to the south end. Said it worked really, really well. But that's really something the city has to address. There has to, particularly if we're looking sometime in the future of having a school beyond Davies, there's got to be public transportation. He said they don't need it all the time, but they need it morning and evening, and if something ran at 6 o'clock for extracurriculars, it would really be valuable to their students.
Thank you for that. Dr. Schatz?
I have addressed that with MetroCog and when they do metro planning on transportation, and that was something that we addressed from day one out there. And so we continue to make that known, and hopefully eventually we'll get something to happen, but just know it has been addressed and we continue to address it. So.
Thank you. I served on MetroCog for several, that's the Metropolitan Council of Governments. It's basically the regional transit board, so it has representation from City of Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, Cass and Clay County. Did I say Moorhead? Yes. And the problem with public transportation is it's really difficult to get routes going that aren't full-time routes. You know, we had the same issue, and it seems to make no sense with public transportation doesn't get out to the industrial park where some of those jobs are, and we would hear the same thing. If we would only go, you know, during shifts, this time and this time and this time, and that seems to be the stumbling block. So it would be nice if there could still be some, you know, creative scheduling. If we can run a gabillion school buses, you'd think they'd be able to figure that out. So we'll kind of keep plugging away at that. Thank you for bringing that up. On to NDSBA sharing. Again, thank you. This is the first time, or is it the second time? Did we do this last year with the? Okay, this is the second time we've used these forms. And I think I found it helpful to have a format to write things down instead of just kind of bringing my booklet and remembering what to say, and helped kind of process the information. So I thank you for doing that. You know, we doubled up on some, but it was always interesting, the different takeaways. But I would open it up again for, you know, it's usually a mixed bag. Some of the things are you get a lot out of and wish you could have more, and some not so much, but I know they try to put on a good variety of sessions for us. So anything you'd like to share that you thought was a worthwhile takeaway, any suggestions we could pass along with someone who's bumming around the wine country and is not with us tonight that we could tell them to take to the board? John?
Yeah, I'll start it off so we don't end on it. The human trafficking session was horrifying, but really good information. And one thing I noted on here was I would like to know if we're have any programs in our schools to identify this, to help alleviate it, or?
I'll give that to Dr. Schatz and
Thank
probably
you.
Dr. Gross.
Well, I can tell you that there's a committee that is formed in the city, and we have representation at that. And so whatever's being discussed there is definitely, there's representation from the school district. But as with all these challenges, with all the things that we deal with within our community, you know, we're looking for the balance. And so It's an awareness issue, and we're aware of it, and we're participating. But, I mean, there's no specific one program that I can say we're doing. And so I can tell you that when I first moved here to open Davies High School, I went to a meeting at West Fargo. And when they brought all the principals together, and it's a meeting they do about 2 or 3 times a year, local law enforcement and those types of things. And that was over 7 years ago now, and they were talking about the fact that human trafficking and also placement of kids who had been involved in human trafficking were going to start to be placed in the metro area in quasi-foster homes. And so it has now come to the realization that it's occurring. So this was foreshadowed, and now it's occurring. And so it's there's a lot of things going on within the community to address some of these things, and we'll do everything we can to be part of it. But we are plugged in.
Dr. Gross, you were in the back of the room, and we mentioned something about professional development for teachers, what to look for, and you had mentioned that there was kind of something in place, and I'd be interested in your reaction. As some of you know, it was my cousin giving the presentation, and I was just a mess, so glad you were there.
After that session, as we had our conversation, I mentioned that across our system and across all of the districts in the state of North Dakota, since the last legislative session, we have all put in place professional development around mental health issues and needs of children. And that is being created by our wellness facilitators, our special education staff, and also some of our counselors. And it'll be something that we continue to grow and develop each and every year, because that is a requirement that every 2 years our staff receive at least 8 hours of training. So as we continue to look for what we can supplement and add and continue to develop, I think topics like this would be perfect to weave into that for our own staff. So after this session, I did go back and talk to some of those individuals who are part of that team, share that information so that as they continue, we can look for how we can provide this to our staff.
Great, thank you. Thanks, John, for getting that one out of the way. Anyone else? Dinah?
Just those of us who were on negotiations all went to, and even others, went to that really excellent presentation from the fellow on the topic. And somebody said in their notes, I can't remember who, that it would be perfect for like a whole day seminar or whatever. So I wrote it on my form, and I told Jim and several others. So if we have any influence and it's not too late, maybe that fellow will be at the negotiations seminar in February, because I think that somebody like that would be really valuable. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Jennifer?
So I just had a couple of additional comments that I would add. I would echo your comments you made about how valuable this is. I really enjoyed reading through everyone's assessment. And I did find it interesting, even when we went to the same, that some of the takeaways were different. So that just proves that the same speaker, 2 different people, you can hear 2 different things, right? So I guess what I would start with is the speaker, Murray Banks. I don't know if this is someone we're considering. He was a motivational speaker, or called himself that, right? He was very engaging and high energy, uplifting. He was the Showtime gentleman, in case you, oh, okay. And so really, there was just one thing I wanted to pull out. I took lots of notes on things that he, highlighted throughout his presentation, but one thing that I found really interesting was he highlighted that absentee rates of teachers are highest in April and May. And so many of us do motivational openers at the beginning of the year. And I find that valuable, but his opinion is their teachers are motivated to come back. We should maybe think about and consider doing this at a time of year where our absentee rates are really high. And then I got to thinking, well, what do we do within the corporate world of which I work? And that is in March. They gather all of us across the nation, and we have this big motivational sort of, and totally. And you all go back and you motivate, you're re-energized. And so I just thought it was food for thought. And so I wanted to elaborate. I thought it was worthy of elaborating a little bit on something to think about. And then the other comment I would make was in regards to the presentation on was it 2000, was it, yeah, legislative session with Representative Cindy Beck and Senator Joan Heckman. And so I think several of us went to that. But I did think a couple of key takeaways were worthy of just highlighting from my perspective anyways. And what resonated was that she strongly encouraged districts and gave the example of early childhood education funding, and when that was being discussed in the last session, that only 2 people from 2 districts came and spoke. And so she reiterated it several times over and over to please come talk to the education committee, come out, whether it's a conversation or to testify. They really want to hear from people. So I thought that was, that was a key takeaway that I thought anyway of her presentation. And then she also mentioned, this international study and some of the differences, right, when they compare our education versus international. But one of the things that I pulled from that is she said, money is important, but it's not the critical mass that will move us forward. And I don't know, for me, it landed like, that's right. We need to, there are lots of best practices out there, and there are other ways, and money doesn't always solve the problem. So within the structure that we do have, because right now it's, certainly, well, and always top of mind of a board, but again, worthy of bringing it up. We need to look for efficiencies in funding and innovations to stretch our dollar. And again, I already mentioned the best practices. Let's look for them and copy them. Don't have to reinvent the wheel always, right? So that was really the only other couple points I wanted to say.
Well, and I thank you for taking such good notes when she spoke. I just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I thought that she kind of got off on kind of a weird tactic. So I read this. It's like, oh, Jennifer, thank you. It's good. That's why we all write these things. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Yep.
Yeah, back on that same session that Jennifer was just talking about, I think, I probably agreed a little, it was a little lopsided in regard to the presentation, unfortunately. They probably didn't intend it to be that way, but time gets away from a person has a fun time talking, and before you know it, the session's over. But at any rate, I think that it did reiterate how important it is to keep in contact with our legislators, and well, hopefully we will be doing an excellent job this time around, but from what I've seen, just my time on the board, Fargo is very well engaged. That doesn't mean that we can't do more. But we probably carry, well, between Fargo and West Fargo, carry a load for the state too, and realizing that not every district has the ability to reach out, like doesn't have the resources, the people resources, to be able to make those connections. So we do work not only on behalf of Fargo and West Fargo, but the whole state, I think, in terms of our advocacy. But just reiterating that it's important for us to do that, and that it's that they want to be educated. Maybe not all of them, but there a certain group wants to be educated, and so if we are approaching it from that standpoint of helping them to learn, so that when bills are being written and the language that's in a bill and how it is going to affect a district, that it is hopefully the effect is what, or the result is what the drafters of the bill intend, and that kind of a thing. And I also, most of the sessions were, I thought, really, really good. Some were more like about, I think, self-empowerment. Maybe the NASA astronaut. There was a little bit, I kind of thought, okay, now am I going to stay here or not? But I decided to stick with it, and I think basically it was, hey, you know what? If an opportunity is offered to you, go ahead and take it. Don't kind of turn away, and focus on your strengths, and don't worry so much about your weaknesses. And at any rate, that was kind of the right here. Don't worry about your weaknesses. You are good at things, he said at the end. It's important for us to all remember that. Any rate, the conversation with Superintendent Basler, I thought was, for myself, that was very educating for me, because she she explained, I thought, in a very easy way to understand kind of the history of, the some of the most recent evolution in regard to standards and how our programs are written, and really illustrating how, I mean, I think if everyone could hear her speak, that what we are doing in our schools is, it's not some national program that's being shoved down, you know, our throats. It's teachers in North Dakota that are giving of their time to help develop our curriculum and our education. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all deal, like there is sometimes that perception. And I also enjoyed listening to her talk about teacher shortages, and that, at least from the information that she shared, North Dakota graduates a good amount of teachers. It's not that we don't graduate a fair amount of teachers, but one of the things that she talked about is that the challenge in the rural areas. And so when, as we all know, we've talked about teacher shortages, and that it's not so much in Fargo, but in the rural areas, and how she was just sharing how when a student, say, goes to like NDSU or UND and graduates in education and tries to get a job within, they like that community, tend to like the community that they went to school in, and all the social aspects and everything that those communities can offer them, and then try to apply for a job and not be able to get it, and then maybe end up working at the mall or a restaurant or someplace else so that they can stay in that community. And so she was saying that there's kind of the challenge of how do we get them to go to Walhalla? How do we incentivize graduates to go to some of our smaller communities? So I just thought that was educational for me. And then a person in the audience talked about career fairs and said, how about at career fairs we have teachers at a booth? And you know, we offer up opportunities for all variety of careers at our high school career fairs, but I don't know, even in Fargo, if we ever say, how about a booth of educators? So I thought that was a nice point to make. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, she did an excellent job. She gave a very good talk. Anyone else have any thoughts to share? How about Dr. Schatz or your crew, everyone who made the trip?
Since I was absent, I would defer to anybody else who might have been there.
Toss that ball. No? Okay. Thank you very much. And I'll just kind of give a heads up. So when we go to Denver, the national convention, you know, there'll be very little doubling up. There's just a ton of things to go to. And that's where, you know, we really get to see a lot of just the national resources put to work in presenting good sessions for us. So take good notes, and those are really great to read as well. And you can really get into kind of the specialty things that is your particular area of interest or focus. So thanks again for this. This was terrific. We will move on to our liaison reports. And is that where we're at? Yeah. Yep. So we'll start with Brandy. Let's start with you this time.
I really don't have, I mean, I visit all my schools, and so I really don't have an update, except for I went to Sound of Music, and it was awesome.
There you go. Very good. Thanks very much. Christy.
I mentioned it briefly earlier when I was at Hawthorne, but I spent the afternoon there, and just the things that they're doing at Hawthorne, the children, the level 10, when the kids were first graders, and they were so quiet and so attentive to their teacher, and when we were reading to them, it was just really refreshing to see that. We had a communications meeting. Jennifer can report on that. And I'm looking forward to the GAC legislative updates coming up.
Thank you. David.
Nothing more to report.
Dinah?
I was at Ed Clap yesterday for their first annual, I assume, or hopefully, Service Day project, which was really, I thought, quite unique. Each grade level had a different project, so K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as a grouping. And they had folks like the Great Plains Food Bank, Bethany, Ronald McDonald House. There was come out, and they did a project that was related to something they were going to do for those folks, which also included making cards and things. So walked around and observed all of that, and then they all got together in the gym and made placemats together that were going to be gifts. So it was really fun to see a school-wide sort of event, and it's of course one of my liaison schools. So I did that, and the Board of Health has met since our last meeting, and nothing earth-shattering except for this, well, two things to share. The Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Addiction sounds like they are really moving ahead and doing some good work. There's various subcommittees, and some of the folks from the Board of Health are involved in that sort of thing. So I think that none of us are happy about the fact that we're in a crisis, but I think that we should all be very proud of the community and all the stakeholders who are working really hard to make improvements in the short term and quickly, as opposed to, you know, meetings ad nauseum until something happens. Most importantly, the medical addictions treatment clinic, that we do not have one here, sounds like that's really close to getting up and running and so on. So I think that's a really big deal. And then the other positive thing, the Board of Health received a grant for a breastfeeding initiative, and we had a report and update about that. And part of that is getting breastfeeding friendly businesses in the metro area, and they gave a nice long list of folks that are, which include, of course, the city of Fargo. And I visited with Brittany, and I'm happy to say that we do all the things to support our staff who do want to breastfeed in the workplace by providing the appropriate room and all the necessary. But we don't have the fancy designation that we can put on our wall and on our business. So I visited with her a little bit about how we can make that happen, because I think with the number of employees that we have in our district and the fourth largest employer, that having us as we do it anyway, a designated breastfeeding workspace is a really nice thing for us to be able to say on top of all the other good things about working for the Fargo Public Schools. So that's it.
Thank you, Dinah. Rebecca?
Okay, Dr. Schatz, passing this list around. Okay, GAC met November 15th, and so what's being passed around right now is an updated list of local legislators, and at that November 15th meeting, those of us that were there, both committee members, and there were a couple of people that weren't committee members that attended the meeting, we assigned ourselves to be liaisons with local legislators, but there are some spaces there that don't have board members assigned. So if there's, if you want to slot yourself in, that would be fine. Or if you also want to, we could make some changes on that list if we want to. I know, Brandy, you sent me a couple of suggestions too, I think, for up in District 44 for some individuals that you know, and we could do some teaming up too. So it doesn't, you know, mean that if there's a name there that you can't also serve as a liaison. That would be fine to have more than one. So you could jot your name down or just get back to me and we'll finalize that list. And I know Brock there's been work on the legislative priorities packet, and that will be, that's being updated still. There was a breakfast that was going to be on December 6th, but there was a conflict with the legislators, and so we're having it on December 13th here in the boardroom at 7:30 in the morning. And we will, and there is a letter that was drafted to invite legislators to that breakfast. There were a few changes, well, as a result of the meeting date specifically being changed. So that will be sent out, but then also we will Once we have the contact information, like email information and phone number information, especially for the new legislators, so that we can, as liaisons, reach out to them and encourage them to attend the meeting. All right, does anyone have any questions? And the next meeting is December 20th for GAC. Does anyone have questions in regard to GAC? No? Okay, and then today I attended the Native American Commission meeting, and I think Fox was there. I can't remember what station was there. There was one TV station there. And we talked about the Dakota Access Pipeline issue. That was one of the main ones, which isn't surprising. And we decided that there's going to be an ad hoc committee formed that's going to be reaching out also with other community members. There are just a variety of different groups of people that are popping up in regard to this issue. And so, and I've been attending some of those meetings as a result of serving on this committee, but there's kind of been the feeling that, you know, if we can kind of circle these groups together, that the conversations will probably be more beneficial in terms of educating people and, you know, whatever the results are. And so I am on this ad hoc committee, and it is to work on some short and long-term goals in regard to also further Native American education. So it's beyond, I would say it's beyond the pipeline. And the discussion was, you know, there will be a decision in regard to this pipeline, but that's not the end of education. There's so much education to be done. And so at any rate, I'm looking forward to serving with folks on that committee and see in terms of meeting other community members too that are interested. And they are planning an event for New Year's Eve. I think they've had this for a couple 3 years, and it's a round dance. And they're looking for a location. I guess about 300 people tend to show up. So that's I believe the next event for that commission. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jennifer?
Okay, so Health Insurance Committee met this afternoon, 4 o'clock, right before our meeting here, and the committee met the new benefits specialist. She comes over from Vanity, and so it was a pleasure to meet her. They shared some numbers, so for those of you who are interested in numbers and participants, here we go. 1,397 members currently participate in our available plans. A little over 1,800 are eligible. As a result of increased communication this year, Brittany's had some really good questions asked of her in terms of the different plans that are out there and offered by the district. And there has been an increase to the HSA plan, which is the newest plan offered by the district, of 69 members just this year, which totals then about 245 members. So the consultant said it would be around 20% by the second year. We've slightly exceeded that, so they were right. So that's always good, right, as forecast. So that's the share out there for health insurance. And the communication committee, let's see, a couple of points. We discussed, you know, number 5 and 6, we continue to go through the communications audit recommendations. And this was ways to enhance communication, both internal and external stakeholders. One of the suggestions or recommendations that came from that conversation was around recording the opening portion of our State of the Schools presentation and sharing that perhaps on our Facebook page or website and things like that. So that recommendation was made. And then, let's see, what else did we have there? We talked about a couple of questions around, you know, how often should we conduct a communications audit? What is the standard? And I believe we forwarded that on to our December agenda again because we weren't certain of the answer. And then sort of one of the other things we discussed is how often should we, not only how often should we conduct them, but how do we follow up with those that had participated in it? How do we continue that communication? Those lines of communication. At the December meeting, we'll be reviewing the most recent public focus group feedback, as well as the communications department will be bringing a plan forward around the mill levy communication. That's it.
Great, thank you. John?
I visited my 3 schools in the past week. That's all in the packet. Wednesday morning, I attended at the invitation of the committee, the Renaissance Zone Committee. They asked for guests from the school board, and I said, sure, why not? And just as a guest, so it was nice. I appreciate that, in particular, Commissioner Pepcorn extending a hand to us to say, hey, just full transparency, here's what we're doing. So appreciate that. I might attend in the future or not. They do a great job, I think, of taking care of all the tax holders and all the stakeholders here in town. So that was good. And Wednesday evening, I attended the Cass County Career and Technical Education Center Board meeting in Castleton. That was my first meeting with that group. For those of you that don't know, there's an initiative throughout the state to create these career and technical education centers. Some areas, they're an actual building that's been built for trade education. Here in Cass County, we've created this kind of virtual center where we had enough existing facilities, and we've been trying to figure out how do we get kids moved around between Fargo, West Fargo, Central Cass, and Northern Cass. So kids have an opportunity, and I left my list in the car of everything that we're offering, but you talked about, CNA training. At Central Cass there, we got to tour their construction trades room. That's looking pretty awesome. We talked about the development of our computer programming courses. Kids can go up to the airport and receive training on, aviation careers. And there's some health ones, and I'm forgetting the full list. I think welding. And it's a really great program, relatively new here, and looking forward to lots of opportunities to grow it in the future. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm really glad I'm on that committee, on that board. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. You have my report, and I apologize, I still have the wrong date for the legislative breakfast, so that's the 13th instead of the 7th. So you are going to have your fill of school board on December 13th, beginning early in the morning. The breakfast starts at 7:30. I would encourage all of us to get here closer to 7, just so we have our act together and can greet people as they come. Photo, so look nice, y'all. And then after the meeting will be our customary holiday party at my house, and I will send out invitations. I'll just let you know right now that only a few days after that, my daughter's getting married in India, so don't expect Christmas decorations and trees and all that business in our home. It's not happening this year, but I will feed you. Just FYI. Today, I attended the meeting of the Fargo Community Development Committee as the school board liaison, and there's 2 exciting things that were presented today. One, and John, I'm looking at you. I was just thinking you would have been so excited to be there. Former Mayor Bloomberg Philanthropy gathered some really powerful stakeholders together and started a program for mid-sized cities, 100,000 to 250,000, called What Works Cities. So it's it's free technical assistance to cities who, we already have our gnomes in the basement corner kind of coming up with all this data, but this is a way to really maximize the use of that data and get that in a understandable way to the policymakers. Okay, so Dr. Gross is getting all excited. It's kind of your song too. So this is really exciting. They've been working on this for about a year, and we kind of gave the final recommendation to accept this. So it's free. It's just free technical assistance that's going to be pretty impactful for the city. And the other thing is, again, something free. A young man who was from Grand Forks actually was on their city council, and his wife was on the school board, and he ran for mayor of Grand Forks, went away to New York to get his master's in planning, policy, whatever, and he came back to he offered for free as part of his, new, like an initial project, to do a neighborhood study in the Roosevelt neighborhood. So talking with all the stakeholders and how that neighborhood is being pressured from a lot of directions in terms of housing and growth and that sort of thing. And so that's great. So you might be contacted by this man. His name is Tyrone Grandstrand. So, so those are kind of two exciting things that are happening in the community development area of the city of Fargo. And that committee is chaired by John Strand, and he's doing a very able job, and he's loving that assignment. So, I would also call your attention to the other thing on my report. On March 13th, according to law, 6 days after the special election, we must meet to certify the results of the election. So this morning at governance, we met, we did agenda planning and so forth, and brought this forward as the time that we will meet. So does 7:30, we could pick any time that day as long as it's on March 13th. So is 7:30 a.m. okay for everybody? Okay, so mark your calendar for that. We'll need a quorum. It'll take just a few minutes. That is all I have, with just the reminder for December 13th. Come early, stay late. All right, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you. We're adjourned. Oh.
Day, so I didn't want it to go missed. So we send
you.
you